Hello everybody and welcome to our Thursday's Andrew Bartzis new teaching show. Today we're talking about the summer solstice. I'm Maty Waller, I'm here with Andrew Bartzis, Tobin and Laura Massey. So we're here to talk about the summer solstice, but of course also for our friends on the southern hemisphere, it's approaching the winter solstice. A time when there's either the largest amount of sun or the smallest amount of sun on the planet. And so we like to promote rituals, ceremony, all those kind of things that we should be thinking about at this time of the year, no matter which hemisphere you're on. So Andrew, how did you want to get this conversation started?
Let's talk about the seriousness of what a ceremony is. So here in our part of the hemisphere, June 17th through the 23rd is the summer solstice. What that means from archaeoastronomy point of view, that means we're going to have the most amount of sun in the day leading up to the 17th to the 23rd. Technically, it's the 21st is the longest day of the year, I believe, or 20th to 21st, where it's 18 hours of sunlight. Sunlight here, sun doesn't go down until after 10 o'clock in the night here. And those are the times you want to be doing ceremony. Now, do you have to do it exactly on those days? No. But you have a target range of the 17th to the 23rd. You have 6 days to get roughly in that. If your schedule is too harsh, you can do it a day after and you can do it before. But let's just, for conversation's sake of the show, you're going to do it on any of those days, the 17th to the 23rd. Now, if you are an A+ effort student, can you do one of each of those in a day? The answer is yes. But any ceremony aligning with the solstice is about the work you've done before. 3 months before that, in March 17th to the 23rd, was the equinox, where daylight and night are balanced 12 and 12. And before that is the winter solstice. The summer solstice is new beginnings. So it asks you what you did to create these new beginnings. And the prayer grounds, what have you done to prepare the new beginnings? What have you done to prepare yourself for the new beginnings? What forms and methods have you been practicing to amplify yourself when you're actually in the ceremony? And then the strategy of the ceremony itself. What is its purpose? The purpose of a ceremony is to raise frequency, open hearts and minds, to discover the joy of doing. Then you start with the telling of your story or wherever you left off with your last ceremony. That's the general outlook. So, Maty, what's it like for you when you do your summer solstice ceremony?
It's my favourite ceremony. It's less of a huge prayer process for me and more of just a celebration of the whole year. I do have my prayers, of course I have my prayers, but I allow them just to be very organic and natural. But it's the only time of the year that I stay awake all night intentionally, and I look forward to it very much. So I will prepare in the morning. I get the garden. Sometimes I'll sage the whole garden. I had a wonderful experience once where the sage actually stayed in the garden, and I don't know why. There was just, if there was no wind, but it actually just sat there like a block and it wouldn't go. It was freaking me out actually how long it was staying, you know. The whole garden just sat there smoky outdoors. It's bizarre. And I clean the fire pit, and I always take out all of any left coals that's left, and then sage up the fire pit, and then put all the timber around and bring things out, and I have a whole day of it. And then once the ceremony itself is done, then I'll burn more timber, but I'll stay out with the charcoals all night. And of course the sun just about goes down and then it comes up again, so it never actually quite gets completely dark on that night. And it's just such a magical experience. For me, that, you know, that's my favourite part. It's the after ceremony part where I get to just sit and play with the charcoals all night and look at the stars.
Wonderful.
And it's the like you were saying, it's the whole year that's led up to that point. And so in that fire, you've let go of the year, and I've spoke about what I would like for the potential of the year coming, and you know what I've learned, what I've earned, and then you just get to like leave that there and have that magical moment afterwards.
Yeah, Dale, what's it like for you to do your summer solstice ceremony?
So what I usually do is, as I'm doing ceremonial time, I do my inner work separately. So I do my inner work before, during the day. I prepare myself for the evening. I get the fire going around about 6 o'clock, and I have a huge fire to like 11 o'clock. So my night time is kind of like the time I do my ceremonies on the evening, and it will just be basically bringing in more light, celebration of life, acknowledging we're all relations, usually with friends holding space and having fun. For me, summer solstice brings up a lot of stuff I have to work on. So it's an opportunity for me to kind of look into that and look into what my scheduling's like for the solstice period, of what inner work I need to do. So summer solstice, a lot happens for me, and it's interesting as you bring in more sun meditations. I do a lot more sun meditations during it. So the ceremonies are just longer and longer, and the light's still out, and you're like 10 o'clock and it's still light, and you're like, what the fuck, this is weird, but this is great. So it's usually just extension of ceremony for me, and just really celebrating the most amount of light and receiving that light as well.
And Laura, what's it like for you?
Well, I try and start about after the spring equinox, and I will use the wood, any wood that's left over from that, and then I do regular sort of prayers over that wood. So I'm carrying forward, I'm building up these layers, and if I've done it right, then that wood is also left over from the winter fire as well into the spring fire. So it's a continual alchemy with the wood that I'm using for the fire. And then I start doing my prayers to the bundles of wood. So I'm big on collecting and making, I call them prayer bundles. I just get lots of little sticks, tie them together with string, pile them up, and then if I'm not there to say prayers on them, I actually will leave a recording saying prayers to them as well. So I try and do this preparation, prepare the ceremonial ground or the prayer ground by doing prayers and sending forward. Also in the past I've sent forward prayers and healings and so on to my solstice fire. But the actual solstice fire for me is a time, as you said, of renewal. So for me it will be the victories that I've achieved this year, what's happened to me this year, and then in the previous 12 months, and then the seeds I'm going to plant for the future, what I want to be reaping in the next 12 months from planting these seeds with the beautiful potency of Grandfather Sun.
Wonderful. Now, in the world of modern shamaning, it's important to be the modern shaman. So learning how to use technology to your ceremonial advantage is something that I try to practice every summer solstice. It's the MacGyvering, the rednecking, the way of duct taping spirit to work together. Example, so many people find themselves unable to put real prayer over their bundles of wood. I tell people, if you're really serious, go buy a big hunk of wood, like what's called a cord. A cord, if it were in individual chop logs, is about 600 pieces. It usually lasts an entire winter for a standard house. Okay? Now, a cord's about $150 US, plus or minus 20, depending on where you're at. Now, that pile of wood, you're going to have to make sure it's got a tarp underneath it so the moisture doesn't go up, and then a tarp above it. And when they dump the wood there, it'll be about 12 feet round, 5 feet tall. That's how big your pile of wood will be. But in between ceremonies, there are times you should go out there with a chair and do a half hour, 45 minutes of prayer, physically present there. But as I said, the summer solstice is about ingenuity. So what I like to do now is take my Bluetooth speaker, put it on the pile of wood under the tarp pole, and play my revocations all night long, all day long, until the battery runs out on my Bluetooth speaker. I have also run a power cord to keep the Bluetooth speaker plugged in for days in a row. Now, I don't always leave it on the top. Sometimes I dig a little hole and put it inside there. Okay? What I've discovered from doing that is many of the old me's that are embedded into those recordings become part of the ceremony. And it's a way to bond yourself to the many yous who have grown and to remind you to do something with them. They're there to help. In the ever-present moment, it's their ever-present moment, recording it, helping your ever-present moment now. And as you go to start that fire and you have your sacred logs on there that have the prayer, something I like to do is go and get a Duraflame log. It's a fire log about this big, that thick. A lot of people know what I'm talking about, a big one. But I also will put extended prayers into that, months worth of prayers. So when that summer solstice fire starts, within 15 minutes, it is a very big fire. Not an hour to get hot, not an hour and a half to get through the smoke and the wet wood. That Duraflame log, once it starts going in about 10 to 15 minutes, burns at 600 degrees. No matter how wet your wood is, it'll give off all its steam and burst into flame in 15 to 25 minutes. When you bond your prayers with an accelerated evolutionary log like that, the very beginning of your fire is dance. Dance until you sweat. Dance and sing. Getting all that energy out and adding it to that rapid acceleration of fire, followed by you going down to your hands and knees and beginning the bonding prayers with the ground. Cleansing out what has happened in the last few months. Letting go of the bullshit. Making sure nothing's going to interfere with you at that particular problem. And then bring yourself back to your chair and begin to watch the fire create coals. Communicate with that. Now back to the Bluetooth speaker. Okay? What I like to do is have that Bluetooth speaker constantly playing to the fire. So I am always hearing my voice in the background. And I begin to add to this voice, into this voice, into this voice. And that's my opening prayer, acknowledging the many different me's who did many different recordings and making them a part of that fire. So as I plan my future, the collective of many me's is a part of it. Cricket.
Oh.
Cricket.
I got a cricket.
Waiting for you to carry on.
So, what makes your unique fires special to you? We will be taking questions from the chat room. So, do people hear audio? And guys, see something in the chat room. Well, our audio is live. Check your audio.
Yeah, there are people putting comments that are relevant to what we're talking about, so the audio must be working for others.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Gail, what do you do to personalize your fire? Like tailoring a suit. When you're in the thick of the ceremony, what are your tailored suit fires?
And so for me personally, it would be, again, putting that prayer in. Then as you're burning the fire, that prayer energy is there all night. For me, it's adding a lot of wood, getting a high fire, strong fire, hot fire. And it's like sweating out process. On the solstice, I'm always just sweating out loads of shit and I'm dancing. I do a lot of dancing in my ceremonies and a lot of psychic surgery work. So when I'm doing the dancing, I'd be doing psychic surgery work as well. Or if there's anybody else, because usually I do events. I'm not doing an event this year, but I do group psychic surgeries during the ceremonies. So for me, it's just personally how I feel on the night. I try and change things up, but it's just about having the most fun as possible, being at the fire with a smile, allowing yourself to celebrate and not being so serious. Like it's a summer solstice, dropping the seriousness, just allowing yourself to have fun. You don't have to be this serious shaman. You can be this light-hearted, fun person who just loves being in the presence of the fire as well. So I have this transition of me being a teacher to a student all the time, and throughout the night I remind myself and tell myself, you're here, and even if I'm doing events, you're a student, remember that. And I'm like, before I start getting a bit too serious, I go back in student mode, then I go back into teacher, then to student. So for me it's like a contrast of doing the teacher stuff when I have events, but still maintaining being a student, still having that funness of, this is a new experience here, this is like people do when they come to a fire for the first time. I'm always allowing that to be present, so I'm always not become rigid in my journey and so on.
Maty, how do you personalize and tailor the fires for you as after it's already gotten going? What do you do?
I've just already gotten going. Well, the build up for me is the feminine part of the ceremony. So that's the part where I take a lot of care in how everything looks. And I enjoy that part a lot. So that's the softer, and then the opening part of it for me is more masculine. That's where I build up and build up and build up, and it becomes, energized, and then once the fire's going and I sit down into prayer, it's a relaxing, and I will make sure I'm on the earth, and I relax everything about me, and then it becomes just a natural flow. But I burn a lot of frankincense as well, and I have all of my sacred objects that come to different types of rituals, ceremonies, and so forth with me. They're always there as well, interacting. And yeah, I do lots of different things. Like some points I really connect with the fire itself and just try to drop the prayer and feel the energy of the fire, and then the fire starts to move and crackle and speak back to me, and it's a playful energy once it's going. I don't really plan too much what I'm going to say. I just have a general theme of what I know needs to be expressed, and it's the build up and the build down for me that I enjoy, all the different flows and motions of it.
So we got a question from the chat room. What if you don't have a place to make a fireplace? Do we need fire? Now, I have personally answered this one many times. The answer is you got to learn to improvise. If you cannot have a fire, do you have a charcoal grill? Like cooking burgers outdoor? If you do, that's more than enough. That's a source of fire. The propane can be replaced. You could put prayer into the propane. You could put prayer under the charcoal. And you can sit in front of it and put something on there and slow cook it, and that is your prayer. It's absorbing your prayer. Slow cook a brisket, smoke something if you've got an old charcoal grill. People sit out next to that stuff all the time. No one will know what you're doing unless you're hooping and hollering. Okay? And let's say you're in an apartment and you can't have a fire at all. You have a stove and a pot of water. That pot of water and the electric stove, it doesn't matter if it's gas or not, that's a heat source. That creates motion in the crystalline water. That motion itself will absorb your prayers. You can make a small little soup that you eat at the end. You can you can save that water and use it as prayer offerings to different lands and different aspects. Once again, the ingenuity is so vital for you. So even if you were in the concrete jungle in a 60-story apartment with just a stove to work with, that's more than enough. It's about the prayer time. It's about the truth that comes out of you. It's not about the accoutrements around you. Now, when it comes to people who say candles, if you can have 50 candles in a room, is that enough? Is that safe? My advice, go for the fire. If you really can't, and there's no self-defeating programs, meaning honestly you can't have a fire, then switch to the stove. Get a hot plate. Get a charcoal grill. If not, go out to a park. Get a campsite. Rent it. Yeah, and even if all of that is a no, and it's an honest no, you can resort to candles as a last resort. Now, Maty, why are candles the last resort?
Because there's not really enough firepower there to increase the frequency to the point that you want for a ceremonial expression. And one of the ways that I've done it before, and this is a really great way, even if you live in a small apartment, is a single camping, I don't know what you'd call them over there. We should say stove, but it's not really a stove. The little single modules.
Single burners.
Single burner. Yeah, that has a can of gas that goes into it, and that produces a beautiful blue flame. Now that's not going to interfere with anything. It's not going to set off any alarms.
Exactly.
It absolutely is completely safe for you. And if you get crystals, and you put quartz and you create like a grid going around them with lines coming in, you can amplify that even further. So there's so many different ways. It's not impossible. I wouldn't imagine, unless you lived in a room with somebody who could control you, how it would be impossible.
Right. And somebody is asking sterno. I have done sterno fires before. The only thing with the sterno fires is they burn very fast. They don't burn slow. Once it gets too hot, you burn through the sterno really fast. A lot of people are like, isn't it supposed to keep stuffed plates for yeah, but it actually, if you take the top off and don't half top it, it burns really, really fast. Okay? So you have many answers right there. You've got the camping stove. You could have a hot plate with a power cord run to it. Again, ingenuity, ingenuity, ingenuity. If you can get that term into you, you can have anything. Okay? Laura, what about for you? Why isn't candles enough for you?
You can't get the intensity of the heat for me. So I like to burn my fires till they're white hot. And so, like you say, using the Duralog is brilliant, because that can start to get the heat going. And candles just you can't get that intensity that you need from them. You might be able to get the light, but there's just isn't that amount of heat, and you need that heat. You need that density of the heat, because you're wanting to transmute energies that you no longer want. You're wanting to be able to clear away things, and in a way that only heat like that from a big fire can do. And I've also used like one of those throwaway barbecue trays. You probably have them over in the States as well, which is and take it down to the beach. When I had a problem doing it at home, I would just go down to the beach. Nobody knows you're not having a barbecue. You just use that as the basis.
Nobody knows. No. Exactly. Nobody knows. So, Dale, what do you do for why our candles aren't enough, and what can you add to that?
So I'd say candles, all you have to do is really picture yourself with a lot of candles, then picture yourself by the fire. So the candles and the fire are just very similar but so different. So just imagine
apples to
now.
Elephants. Like I said,
yeah.
Apples to elephants.
Yes.
An apple to an elephant.
So if you picture, say, 60 candles right now in front of you, then you change that image and look at a fire. Fire dances, fire moves, fire communicates. I'm sure the candles do, but the fire has such a different elemental frequency. And like Laura said, there's that heat at you, and it changes and it gets very, very hot. The experiences are very different, because you can use candle for magic, you can use candles for clearing out chakras and psychic surgery stuff as well. But specifically fire for me is just such a different experience. And experiencing them both, go out there, try the candles, then try the fire, and have your own experience from that.
Yeah, can I add something, Andrew? Because
Sure.
I do use candles in my practice, and I use it in exactly the same place that I use my indoor fire, but it's more of a ritualistic thing. So if I'm having one of these healing baths, if I'm doing prayers at my altar, I light a candle just to have that element of fire there. The prayers are still powerful, but ceremony is ceremony, because with a candle you go for the opening prayer, you'd light them, then you'd close prayer, then you'd blow them all out, and it's not the same as the fire. It's just not the same as nurturing a fire, having the fire, the charcoal's going down. That's the idea of ceremony. It's an extended ritual, like a ritual on steroids.
Right. So now I want to talk is, once you have a fire going, keeping it alive by adding wood and turning over the coals. The turning over the coals is a vital part of the fire ceremony alchemy. Your poking stick or implement or tool is going into that fire. It's hot energy. You're creating breath and air for the fire. So learning how to manipulate the fire like a masseur, not just flipping things over and making the fire go out. So it's vital that we learn that process of turning the coals, so that when we turn the coals and get the fire to breathe more and add more wood onto it, it gets stronger and more intense, and the fire reaches out and touches us at the core. And then our core opens up and sends more into those coals that have opened up. So learning to be a fire ceremony practitioner is learning how the lifespan of your fire, how to bring life to it, how to slow its burn down, how to get it very intense to match the prayers and dance and words and actions that are coming through you and out from you and around you. So what do the coals mean to you, Maty? How do you work with the coals?
Sorry guys, somebody came in the room. The coals are the transmutation part, aren't they? That's where you get to really sit with the energies and allow that, because it gives off a very intense energy. And I like to, like you say, I play with the fire, so I know how to. When I've got it like that, I know I can control any fire I want, because anything I put onto that is going to ignite. So, I can choose to move them away and cool them down, or then bring them back into the middle into a pile and get it all heated up again, and then put on some more logs. And that process, I eke it out over the whole night. And then when I like to, by the end of especially a big ceremony, I like to have a big pool of embers, a big thick pool of embers. And I create like a hole in the middle and make just like a symbol of like, you know, the eye symbol. And I always do that. I've done that ever since I started, and then I'll just sit there and watch that right until the very moment. And that's the endurance part, because I've got to take it right to its end. And that's where I'm sitting there and I'm so tired, but I know all of that's just happened. And I mean, the feeling that you have inside yourself is unlike anything else, isn't it? It's almost like a medicine journey. It really is like a temporary medicine state that you enter into by the time you get right to the end of the charcoals.
Right. Those trees are ancestral offerings from the tree. That wood has wisdom of that tree being offered to you when you are turning the coals of the grandfather and grandmother and brother and sister trees who have offered their life as service to you, the ceremonial practitioner. And when you accept that energy, accept yourself being the sacred fire tender, once again giving life to that wood to be of service once again. Okay? Those trees have been activated by photosynthesis during their growth. And as they turn into fire, that light comes out through the fire and can be a powerful, rejuvenative soul energy to you. Dale, question for you.
Hello.
How do you open a ceremonial fire with a prayer? Give us an example.
So you'd start by, I always start, well, you don't have to start from the east, but what I'd like to do firstly is get myself into a relaxed state before I call in the directions. Then I'll call to the east, where you're calling to energies of clarity, illumination, the hawk, and so on. And then I'd call to the south, the dreamers of the southern skies, the inner child. I'd allow my inner child to come sit by the fire with me, and I'll give him a hug and let him just play around. Then I'll call to the west, which is our dreams, our goals. So as I'm praying, I'll be focusing, and so as I do the ceremony, I'll map out where the north, east, southwest is on my compass. So as I'm doing the prayers, I'll be praying to each direction. So the west is the dreams, and I call to the jaguar from the west as well. The north, the grandmothers and grandfathers. So for me, it was a script at the start, but for me, it's about going into my genius with the prayer. I just allow myself to go into new layers, try and say new things. Then I'll call to the above, the galactic frequencies, the cloud beings, the thunder beings, and so on. Then I'll call to below, where I'll honor the land with blessings and offerings and so on. So each time it will be different, but it's just about going into that high frequency state with prayer and just allowing it to let go of the things which you need to detach from. So it's like, for me, as I say my prayer, I'm cutting through my bullshit, I'm letting it go, and I'm honouring everyone as all relations in that space, in non-judgment, in non-competition, and so on. So for me, each prayer is different and unique, and I've got a set of prayers, and I use the one you use, Andrew. I really like that one sometimes. I call to the eastern doorway of perception, the ancestors who live within the galactic and universal central sun. That's one of my favourite ones, so sometimes I do use that one. So for me, it's just how I feel on the day, right? What am I going to do? What am I going to say? And so on.
Well said. Laura, what's your example of an opening prayer? Or setup for the opening?
The setup for the opening. I like to have the prayer ground with the 4 directions. So I'll put objects at the 4 directions. And then you want me to speak? Do you want me to say like a setup for an opening
give an example.
prayer? Yeah, fine.
Show off.
So it's so I will be co-creating, with the energies of the moment. So sometimes I have to put myself there to actually feel this. So I call upon the 7 directions. I call upon the 4 winds to come bring their elements and spread the words of peace across the land. With this fire I'm co-creating on this solstice. I stand here now, Grandfather's son, as your energies are co-created within your fire that stands before me now. This fire of fires, this fire of all solstices where I have ever held a fire, I co-create with you now and bring to you every revocation I've ever spoken, every prayer I have ever spoken, all the joys of my life, Grandfather Fire, I bring now. And so I may share this beautiful no time moment with you as I step out of fraud time and into Earth's natural time. And I call in all the elements. I call in wind. I call in water. I call in Earth Mother. And I call in you, Grandfather Fire. So together we may co-create the energies of the fifth world of peace. Aho.
Aho. Maty, you give us an example of your opening prayer or steps to the opening prayer.
So what I do is, the first thing I do is I say, I call to my sacred frequency of life force, that part of the prayer. The raw expression that fuels something that fuels the expression of life drive. I don't know why I can't remember it. I say it so much. So I call in that part, and then I connect to my fetus, and then I connect to the universal fetus. And then I bring in the higher aspects and other aspects that I've created, other versions of myself. So I do myself first, effectively. And then I connect to Earth Mother, the 8 directions, the 5 elements, my guides and guardians. I connect to the ancestors, and then I will burn some incense for them as an offering. Then I go to more of the celestial connections. Then I go through the solar connections, and then I go to Great Spirit, and then I open ceremony. But that sounds all very mechanical.
You bring everyone in first.
Yes, but
populate your ceremony.
Yes, but the trick is, there's sometimes where I'm doing one of the indoor fires, and I will just blitz through it because I for whatever reason I've got to get to the fire needs to be done, and so it's not as ceremonious. But when I want to make an expression, each one of those that I go into, like the 8 directions itself, that could be a 15-minute prayer. So, each one of those sections that I go to, because when I say guides and guardians, obviously I'll begin to name guides and guardians. And when I go to the ancestors, I'll give an empowered prayer, something from the heart. And each one of those connections, it's how poetic, how spontaneous I can be when I'm opening up that ceremony that builds up the energy for the ceremony itself.
Wonderful. So everyone, you now have how to set up a fire, why candles aren't enough, and if you can't have a fire, a way to do it on your own stove. So there is no excuse. Anytime we are trying to do ceremonies, we will argue for our limitations. Let's talk about arguing for our limitations when it comes to just doing a fire or doing anything. So Dale, what can you tell people about how they argue for their limitations to not do?
So an example would be, you're planning a fire ceremony for summer solstice. It comes to 2 days before the summer solstice, and all of a sudden you're too busy. There's something going on in your reality and you don't have time to go get the wood, or your life's too crazy for you to go and get the wood, get the sage, and so on. So all of these things will come into you, these self-defeating habit patterns, programs, which try and stop you from doing it. And a lot of people argue with themselves, then all of a sudden they haven't done the ceremony and they're like, oh, well, I was too busy. I'll do it tomorrow. The do it tomorrow thing. and I've learned from the do it tomorrow thing with my journaling as well. Like, there is a part of me sometimes I've said, I'll do it tomorrow. And I go, I go, hey, motherfucker. It's like, shut up. Like, get yourself up and go fucking journal. Like, it just comes out of me. So it's about noticing that. And you've got to look, like, planning ahead is important. Finding when you do have that time to go ahead and do it and commit to yourself for the love of yourself to go and do it. And you will have these things which come up for you, arguments like happen in the house or the kids go crazy before, but I'm so used to it now, I just kind of like laugh at it and see it unfold, but I choose not to step into it and let it affect my ceremonies. So I even have it sometimes and I laugh at myself when it comes out my mouth.
Well done. Laura, what can you tell about the process of arguing for your limitations and recognizing it in yourself?
Yeah, you got to see, like Dale was saying, I see the programs that come up all the time that say, I haven't got time to do that. It's more important I do this and this first. And you really have to overpower those programs, because we do have busy lives. We do have other things going on. We do have family, children, so on, the dog to walk, shopping to be done, all the things that go with our day-to-day life. And you can always say there's something else you have to do. But if you keep doing that, you're never going to get to do it. So I have to focus on overriding the programs. And I actually see the programs. I actually see them come up, like Dale was saying. And I can feel it like I'm about to go into an argument. Well, I can't do this now. I really haven't got time. I'm too tired. And that's where, like you've always taught, it's the courage, commitment and discipline. That is where it really comes in, because you've got to use that to override those programs that will stop you doing the preparation, let alone the fire on the day. So another thing I do is I actually agenda it, so I calendarize it. And just like everything else has to be done on that calendar, like an appointment, this is my appointment with the fire. This is my appointment with preparation for the fire. I can't skip that appointment. You know, that's on there, and I've got to make sure I do that. And that's the only way for me that I do get joy in it. It's not the only way I stay disciplined to do it, but it helps you in times when you could get caught out just simply by tiredness at times. Just, it could be something as simple as that, or someone's asked you out somewhere and you'd really like to go.
I want to give you another example of arguing for your limitations. I can't have a fire. What if somebody sees me? I can't have a fire. I don't have wood. That's arguing for your limitation. When you begin to see those instant answers of why you can't do it, part of your journey is to instant answer why you can do it, why you should do it. And yes, my lawnmower in the back is starting.
And the thing is as well, isn't it, Andrew, that these are invitations to grow. That you shouldn't sit there and think, oh God, my programs are over. You know, what it is when it happens and you recognize it, that gives you an opportunity to move through it. And so you know, right. And the more of them that you have to go through, if you have to go through a whole section of those over the weeks leading up to it, and you eventually get to have your fire ceremony, the potency behind that fire ceremony, it will have that energy in you because you made it. You made it. And it can't be, exaggerated enough. That is the inner journey.
Exactly. That is the inner journey. And if you're one of those people who has broken procrastination, who has broken the arguing for limitations, like Maty said, when you have that fire, magic will be there waiting for you as a gift. So I want to give some other examples of arguing for your limitations, ones that are really, really subtle, like what is my husband going to think if I do this? What is my girlfriend going to think? They're not spiritual, they're Christian. Are they going to call this of the devil? Okay? Or the worst, you get in front of the ceremony, you open and start it and do nothing. You just sit there. Nothing to say because you're in a deer in headlights. Is that an affront to the fire or the program's owning you right there? It is an affront to the fire. You made sacred because you're not in your body strong enough to say something. So what are some other examples of arguing for limitation? Anybody got an idea?
Well, I had one this morning. I had one today. I had to get some stuff off of the internet, I was doing it all just work on the computer. And so there was something I had to do and I figured right, okay, we'll do that tomorrow. So I got everything else sorted out, and then I found myself sitting here just looking at the wall. Because, and I was like, hang on a minute, I'm literally just doing nothing. So I was like, oh, fuck. And I had to go back, right, I'm going to do it right now. There's no leaving it till tomorrow. And I realised that was what was happening, just sitting there doing nothing. And I'd put it off for no reason whatsoever. And then I found that once I did it, it was done so quickly, and then all the energy just goes psh, and opens up for better things.
Mine was
Anybody
finding
else?
my voice. Yeah, I really couldn't find my voice, and I didn't want anybody hearing me. I'd be sort of sometimes barely a whisper. And then I think, oh, if they heard me, what would they think with this strange language I'm using and so on. But after a while, you realise it really isn't honouring the fire unless you're going to speak out in a potent way and co-create with that fire. You're being meek, which is something, I really had to work on, and I've had to work on quite a lot. So the fire has really helped me with that, because I didn't want to let the fire down. I wanted to be there and co-create with it fully. And in the end, I forgot about whether anybody heard me next door. I forgot about whether anybody was passing, what they would think. When you get so in the moment with your flow of those prayer words, then it becomes just a beautiful co-creation, and the rest of that doesn't matter. It becomes irrelevant.
Exactly. Becomes irrelevant. Now that you've heard about arguing for your limitations, now we're going to talk about flipping the frequency on any program inside you on the lead up to the ceremonial time. I'll do it tomorrow. And what you tell the I'll do it tomorrow person, tomorrow's not a day on the calendar. What day on the calendar are we doing it? I'm holding you accountable, program, and if we don't do it that time, program, you're fired. You have to hold so much of spiritual journey is holding yourself accountable to doing. Okay? And part of the flipping your frequency is what we call due diligence in the moment. Okay? Here's another example. You've done your prayers. You've prepared the prayer ground. But for some reason, you were going to start your fire at 5 o'clock, and something gets you distracted, and 5:45 comes along, you're rushing home. Have you created the front to the fire? No. The fire does not operate in time. It operates outside of time. During the time that the fire is burning, you are sharing a no-time presence. So if you find yourself late to your own fire, how do you make it up? You make it up by calming yourself fast, going through the journey of prayers, dedicating the awake, aware in the body you to being a part of it, making sure you're not distracted with that. Now, so many people find themselves living at a home with other family members or children. If you are a young mother trying to do a fire ceremony, you are better off having the kids by the fire, a part of it, than you are stuck in the corner watching the YouTube, possibly potentially screwing with your head. And a lot of mothers, well, what if I need to say things? They won't understand mostly, okay? You can give them marshmallows to cook, and they get to share their innocence with it. You get to use prayers around them, even teach them a little. And if they're safe around the fire, they're not obviously running headlong into the fire, and they got their fire sticks, and they're being peaceful children, go about your ceremonial business. If they ask what you're doing, I'm creating a prayer. How about you do one? What would you want to come next week and next month? What toys do you want? Where do you want to go? Tell the fire. So mothers with children, it's okay to have your babies around the fire if it's safe. Don't worry about that. The same with your pets. It's when the neighbors unannounced come over. That is a breaking of the boundaries. The standard boundaries that you have for family members, especially the young children, is okay. It's different. You got a 15-year-old coming up and yelling out the door, "Mom, when's dinner?" And you yell back, "It's in the refrigerator." The kids should know to not yell. Okay? Prepare the children ahead of time. I'm doing my thing. Interrupt me. I'm chopping a hand off. Okay? Or taking your phones away. Okay? Enforce those boundaries. So Laura, in the beginning, you had that meek voice you had to find. You had boundary issues. What can you tell people about getting over the boundaries that don't want you to do anything?
You just got to enforce them. So I would lock the back gate, and I gave instructions that unless it was an absolute emergency, I wasn't to be interrupted for anything at all. And that was just being strict like that was the only way I could make sure that nobody would interrupt me. And if a neighbour did call out over the fence or something, honestly, I would ignore them. I would not be distracted by that, because hopefully they would hear me speaking, and then it would be, well, we better not interrupt her. So luckily that didn't happen too much, but it did take a while to actually be really solid in the decision that you weren't going to be interrupted when you're doing the fire. So you could take the time. You need that time, and you need that co-creation and honouring of the fire. And there should be nothing other than an emergency. And if that emergency happens, then you close down. But you close down. You never ever walk away from an open ceremony, from an open portal with that fire. You always close down. And if you come, even if I was going to the garage nearby to get wood, if I hadn't got enough, I would just close it briefly and then come back and open it. I wouldn't
Exactly.
disrespect the fire at all.
So there's a fine line between a ceremonial fire and a recreational fire. During many of your ceremonial fires, it will naturally become a recreational fire because you close it down with your own frequency, but you open it up with one more prayer. And that was what Laura was trying to say. When you truly are distracted, you brought your phone with you. Turn it off, okay? Or don't even have it by the fire. Making sure you have all the opportunities. You have your drinks ready. You have your little snack ready. You have the music that you wanted to play in a playlist that's already ready to go. You have a blanket to lay down on if you want to. All your stuff is prepared.
I had a list I used to go through for every fire to make sure that I was taking absolutely everything out there with me, a bottle of water and so on, everything that I'd need.
Can I add something about the children, Andrew?
Sure, go ahead.
Because the process for me, it was kind of, I find it easy to not allow adults to come into the sacred time. It's very easy, but with the children, it's very different. And I initially had is Laura echoing? There we go. I initially had I was quite strict with the children at the beginning, and it would ruin the ceremonial expression for me, just enforcing. And so there was a gradual process where I had to learn to soften and allow that to happen, but in the same time they learned what my boundaries were as well. So the more I softened and explained, they understood, processed, and then integrated. And so over the years, as my ability to be calm around these types of scenarios has developed, so did my flow of prayer, but so did their discipline with me. And where it comes to, because I do some in the main living space when I'm doing with my the rubbing alcohol, and there's always people flitting around. Sometimes I will say, can you give me just the space for half an hour? But if it's unavoidable, and there are prayers that I need to say that are not for the children, then I do the internal prayer. So I can do a mixture of external and internal prayer. So if you're at a ceremony with children and the prayers are okay, but if you've got something to say, you can easily flip it inside and do it with as much poetry and power as if it's external. It just takes a bit of practice.
This is vital. That's why it's okay, especially young mothers with young children, 1 year old, 4 years old. As long as they're safely in a high chair or in a comfortable place where they're not going to have any type of injury or get smoked out, having their energy there is wonderful for your journey. It can help soften you and get you to that playful energy where you can play with the fire and use the mommy voice on the fire and get some of your true hardcore feelings out. And the children won't know those words. They will know the frequency of letting go.
And watch them come and give you love. And watch them.
Yes.
They pick up on the energy. When I'm sat at my altar, oftentimes the children will walk past and they'll kiss on my head and then keep walking because they feel the energy that's coming from the process. Yeah.
Now, another thing, when you have a ceremonial fire, there's ancestral work. I always like to leave an extra chair at the fire for the ancestors to come and sit. Sometimes when I'm really serious, I'll set up 6 or 7 chairs. And I'll be in my spot watching the ancestors come and fill up the chairs. And I'll add offerings, different ceremonial offerings that I've made over the year on each chair. That's the way I do it. Laura, what can you talk about inviting the ancestors to be a part of your actual conversational fire? You're muted.
Joe's muted me.
No.
Okay,
You're unmuted.
I'm here. Okay, yes, I love doing the fire next to my ancestral shrine to start with, and then I will dress up the shrine, with some wildflowers or something, some grasses, anything tied together. And for the day, I might put bunting on the shrine as well. I want the ancestors to be there and be part of it. And I've got some logs, some wood logs, seats that I will put round the fire, and I would also do them a brew on the fire. So I have my pan on the fire and boil up some water and might make an ancestral tea. And I definitely talk to my ancestors. I give them space at the fire and use the fire as a portal of connection to them, so we can establish some sort of communication beyond what I do maybe day to day, because the fire, especially a solstice fire, is that extra special fire, and you know the ancestors are enjoying it, and we dance as well. I mean, I know they dance because I dance and they're dancing, and we're all having a good time, and it's like it's tea, it's sharing something that's brewed on the fire, it's sharing the fire, it's sharing the whole energies, and yeah, it's a very enjoyable time to have them to your fire.
Yes. So Dale, what can you add about on the fire, ancestors around the fire?
So what I do is when I call to the north, call to the grandmothers, grandfathers, the Blue Road ancestors, is through my fire, like my dad's crossed over, he's in the ancestral home with my grandma, my nan, my great nan, and as I do it, I see them as residual images of what they were, but I know that isn't them in this present moment. But then I call to the lineage back, so I bring all the, obviously the ancestor, the lineage in, and I just see them surrounding me. There will be times I cry, because obviously I do love them, and when I see my dad's face and my mum's face, not my mum, sorry, my grandma and my nan, I do get tears most of the time. So as I call to them, I see them just walking up to me, and I just, sometimes I grab the hand, or I grab like my dad's hand or my grandma's hand, and I'll just see like my nan's mum. I've never met her, but I can see her. I've seen pictures of her, so I see her as well behind my nan, and it's just like family coming together, and there's that feeling of they're always there, they've never left, and it's just such a special honouring to be part of it, and them to be part of here, me to be part of them. So for me, it's using the image of my ancestors, but then expanding through it by going up the lineage and calling to them. And it's a bit like a meet up, like a soul family reunion, where we're like, oh, hi again, guys.
Wonderful. So now let's talk about the fire itself. You've brought the ancestors in, you've got the fire at the peak. Then there comes a moment you feel the first form of tiredness. You've raised your frequency, the fire's matched it. Now it's a time for inner peace. Maty, what are those inner peace next to the ceremonial fires like for you?
These are the moments where I feel like maybe the fire needs to speak. And so what I will do is I will begin to... sometimes I will begin to build the fire, or move it around. But oftentimes it just takes... Or I'll feel that moment's happening, and I'll build up so I can, make that moment longer. Build up the fire, blow into it, get it going, and then sit back. And then I try to not allow the monkey mind to run too much, because sometimes I'll find myself in a thought and I think, whoop, and have to bring myself back. But for me, that is that point. It's where the fire wants to speak, and whatever inspiration comes from it and whatever thoughts come from is whatever comes. But yeah, it's definitely a moment of giving from the fire and receiving for our part.
Important, that receiving. Laura, what's it like for you when you find yourself in that moment?
It's a time for calming down and finding that inner peace. So I will sit with the fire and, just like Maty, watch the smoke, watch the coals, watch the wood, watch the flame, watch the colour of the flame. I do have a quiet time by the fire. There will be a time when all the sort of the singing, the poems, the speaking is done, and you just want to sit and have that really gentle, peaceful... it's still a co-creation, because you're both sitting in a meditative... The fire and you is almost in a meditative state, and you're just listening to it hissing and crackling, and you might have some water on there that's gently bubbling away, and it feels like a lot of the verbal, the out loud, name it to claim it stuff is sort of done, and now it's sitting with that and letting that settle and letting that process happen before maybe going into whatever your next stage is.
Dale?
So I would have a moment where the fire calms down, and the kind of like the coals are there and the embers, and you can see it, and it's like, as it's like going up and down the light of the embers, like bright down, I have like a contemplating processing time where I feel like I'm held by the lands. I listen to all the nature around me, and there's just a beautiful sense of stillness and how beautiful this world is, and how I'm part of all all that is, was, and ever will be. And there's just that moment of where I'm processing what I've done, processing my life, and I think gratitude comes into me a lot there. When I'm looking at the fire and I'm celebrating and thinking about what happened in the ceremony itself, but I'm seeing how great my life has become. I'm seeing what choices I have made. That final bit for me is about looking at, like a child looks in the fire. I'm just staring and I'm just receiving and processing and going through those motions. And that's so special to me, like feeling part of the land, hearing the birds, hearing synchronicities all around you. Like you'll hear a fucking owl go, whoo, like call to you as you're like in the ceremony, and just stuff like that just makes it so magical. So yeah, processing for me is that silent time of connecting to the land.
So the next thing I want to talk about is shaman tricks. Tricks and magical tricks. Since the dawn of fires, shamans have shown a story through the fire. They put on stories and storytellers, and the fire can respond to their words. And then there are times you bring something to the fire so that it answers back to you with a pop, a snap, a crackle, a blow, an energy. When we decide that we're going to have a real ceremonial fire, and we know we're going to go through the ups and downs of it, and the weeks leading up, we remind ourselves, there's going to come a moment where I need a trick for myself. One of the easiest ways you can do is go buy 2 big, that's right, stick matches. You can break off the the tips, and then take a little piece of tissue paper and just twist up the tip in the tissue paper and get a few hundred of those. Quite literally a few hundred of them. They're very simple to make. You can over ingenuity it. I know people who put a little bit of Elmer's glue on it, because Elmer's glue, when it goes under fire, it makes a color. Okay? There's little things that you could add to the tissue, such as copper shavings, metal shavings, that actually changes the color to the fire. So when you start throwing these in, you're giving new prayers. It goes psss. So what I like to do, when the fires reach that point where I want to do that, I'll take the coals and I'll open them up, and I'll make like a big triangle and pull the coals out. So the logs are back there, so there's a bed of coals in front of me that I start throwing my things down. But each one has the wisdom of my words coming out of it. I will overcome the next time I find myself in this situation. I send this to the future me. Okay? Now, you can replace matchsticks with all sorts of other special little shamany stuff. Now, this requires a form of safety. Okay? We've talked about rubbing alcohol in salt fires. When you put rubbing alcohol in salt, it makes a blue flame. Okay? You can take said tissue papers, put a little stone or a pebble in it, dip it in the rubbing alcohol, and throw it in. And before it'll even land, it'll burst, and you'll watch the pebble hit. If you are able to truly be safe around the fire, there are all sorts of little things that make noise add to the fire. In the past, I have used standard black powder, not gunpowder for modern guns, 1800s and 1700s black powder. You obviously never have the powder next to the fire, but you can prepare the same little pinches inside the little tissue paper and throw it in there and go, poof, have a noise. Also with the rubbing alcohol, you can put it into a squirt bottle, and from 2, 3, 4 feet away, shh, woof, shh, woof. Don't put it on mist, and make sure you're not dumb about it. But actually having those 1, 2, 3, 4 squirts, all of a sudden it's a massive blue fire on top of your white that's pulling you in. Those alcohol also absorb prayers, powerful prayers that go through that stream and straight into the core of that fire. Now, another trick I like to do, when I get my fire to its peak, its hottest, the biggest amount of coals, what I would have done for days ahead of time is I take a wheelbarrow and I fill it up with water. And then I put 3, 4, or maybe 5 logs in there to make sure that they are soaked for days, wet to the core. And that when that fire is the hottest, I will add 1, 2, sometimes 3 or 4, because my intention is that hot fire is making steam mixed with smoke. And then I will turn them so the steam is constantly being let out. And these logs will speak and sing like a chorus, pop, hiss, hiss, all sorts of unique musics and noises. Okay? Now, another thing you can do is if you have your hot fire really, really, really hot, you can take small amounts of water, like something in like a squirt gun, and squirt through the top of the fires. But your goal is to hit the fire with the squirt gun or the spray gun. Why? Why do you want your fire to meet that water? Because it's instant alchemization. Okay? So something as a spray gun or a squirt gun becomes a ceremonial tool of alchemy.
That's
so
one
what
of
tips,
the...
what tips do you guys have for others?
So as you're saying that, Andrew, that's one of the things I do at the end of the ceremony. I look forward to it is, so when it's finished the fire, I've always got quite a bit of water, and I'm like, I get everyone round and I was like, get ready guys. So I put the steam in and I put my arms out and I let the steam just fully envelop me. So just constant steam around me. And it's pure alchemy. It's such a fun process doing that.
Laura, what about for you?
I use a copper pot. We used to have one in the restaurant, so I took it outside, and it makes the flames go absolutely some amazing colours. And
Green,
then
purple,
really, just beautiful. And then fill that with water and some stones and grass and earth or whatever added to it from the land to get that connection, and then sort of enjoy the steam that's coming up alongside the smoke. And with the rubbing alcohol, soaking crystal salt in the alcohol, I used to use a separate little baking tin to one side of the fire, so I had that blue flame alongside the main fire. And another another point of alchemy was I used to have the fire under the tree where I took the wood from, so you'd get all those layers of the smoke and the prayers going through the wood that you would then going through the tree, and you'd then collect the wood from that the next year and use that on the fire again.
Okay. Also, women, you can use some of your blood from your periods in these fires. Blood is a powerful alchemy tool, especially when you're in a high ceremonial fire. Maty, what little tools and tips do you have for people when they reach that spot on the fire? They got to bring out those extra things.
I'm just really inspired by what you were saying about the soaking the timber. I've heard you mention it before, but I had much more imagination with it then as to what it would be like as it begins to sing and crackle. So I haven't really got much to add to what you guys have said. My own magical processes are slightly different. They're not really that kind of thing. But one thing that I do is I will put any timber that I'm going to use around the outside of the fire itself, and I build it up. So as I'm burning the timber, that energy goes into the wood that's all around it, and especially when that starts to go as well, and it can start to pop and crackle, and then eventually what happens is as the fire's going, one piece might burst into flames, and so that piece can go on, and it's just being playful with it really, and then the language that you use comes quite spontaneous. And I use rubbing alcohol as well. When the fire's, if you get to a point where the fire's dimming a little bit and you want to all of a sudden light up the atmosphere, I keep some on my altar that's always charged with the prayers at the altar, so I'll bring that out and just splash a piece and it'll go and
right. So now we're going to talk about cooking over your ceremonial fire. So Dale, why do we want to cook over the fire?
Because it's extra alchemy and extra, I'd say, magic and healing for yourself, because all of the prayer of the ceremony will be in that food or in that soup, and you'll be ingesting that. So as part of the ceremony, you'll be drinking this ceremonial energy into yourself, and it'll heal you beyond words, because all the alchemy of the prayers are put into that food, the magic of the moment, the sacredness, all of everybody's energy they've put into the ceremony itself is there as a physical form of food. And as you eat that or drink that, if it's soup, You have obviously such a great healing into the gut, into the intestinal tract, which can help with your dreams and all sorts of connections to ancestors.
Wonderful. Laura, what do you like to cook when you do your ceremonial fire?
Well, I do the ancestral tea, but usually it's chicken bones. So I do like a grandmother's broth, grandmother's soup on the fire, and I will also share that with the land. So I put in the bones, the carcass, the chicken carcass, and whatever else I have really, some veg and some herbs. Especially if you've got something that's growing on your land, I think I've got some few herbs that I added into it as well. So again, you've got that co-creation with the land, which then with the prayers overwards, I will share with the land or leave a cup of soup for the ancestors as well around the fire.
Okay. Maty, how do you do with cooking around your ceremonial fires?
So that's the last thing that I do. I don't do it all the time, but when I do it, it's the last thing right at the end. So I've had my evening, and I know the charcoals have gotten to the point where, that I've only got a couple of hours left in it, maybe, or an hour or so, and I'll cook some chicken, usually chicken, but whatever I have in the freezer, whatever I've got there at the time, but chicken. And when I've had that whole night, done my ceremony, watched the charcoals, out smoking in the garden, watching the sun come down, and sometimes I'm not even hungry. But when that chicken is the best fucking chicken I've ever had, it is just stunning, and it just finishes off the whole thing for me. And then I'll just wait for the charcoals to go out and get myself to bed.
All right, so when it comes to cooking, one of the easiest things you can do is buy one of those little triangle things that fit over the fire. They have a little chain that hang on them, and a little holds a pot. That's called a Dutch oven. You can get the Dutch oven for about $12 online, and the little triangle stand for about $15. Absolutely invest into those things if you are intending to do a regular ceremonial fire, because there's going to come a point where you really want to do the inner work. And with a Dutch oven, you could cook literally anything in it. I have cooked entire pizzas in the Dutch oven, from yeast with hot water I boiled over the fire, and flour that I had a special bowl that I rolled and kneaded and everything, and then I put the dough to rise in the actual Dutch oven that I had at the highest level, so it was right about bread proofing temperature, and it took about 2 hours to prepare that yeast. And then I'll just spread the oil and the butter on the inside of the pan after I rolled it out and put it back in there, put all your toppings on, put the top down, and in about 20 minutes, your pizza's done. When I'm serious, you can cook anything in a Dutch oven. I am serious, anything. And I highly encourage all of you that part of your ceremonial fire have cooking, even if it's hot dogs on a stick. Okay? Just prepare ahead of time. There's going to come a part of the time of the fire where it's not about the words you do anymore. It's the actions and how you choose to receive the energy in you. You've put all that energy in it. It's time to ingest it. Ingest it in such a way that it'll bring you to the Dreamtime fires and help you go through even more. Now, like Laura said, soup is so simple to do. Any leftover bone. Do you really need to drink it or eat your bone soup? No. But if you add a few veg in it, you can. It just becomes a beef-based, a bone broth soup. Okay? Or you can go full-on faux noodle soup. Cook all the beef bones on the fire, and you have a bone broth, and just throw your glass noodles in there. Okay? And a little bit of green onion. Exactly. You got a faux soup right there. There's all sorts of ingenious ways to incorporate cooking. I highly, highly recommend that ahead of time, be it hot dogs, a steak, just get the cooking implements that you're going to need. Now, like Laura said, oftentimes I like to set up my fire where I can pull out coals or have a little small twigs so I can have a couple bricks with a grate on top of it, so I have a kettle there. Okay? Kettle for my tea or my hot chocolate so that I don't have to go in and heat it up there. Having that a part of it too. Okay? Giving yourself all the unique opportunities for this fire to pay you back. Okay? What type of things does anybody else like to cook? Anybody ever cooked a pizza by a fire?
And just something to add there, Andrew, what you were saying about the tea. So I used to go for a fire with my friend, and I used to meet him like twice a year, and we used to have the fire, and it was like a tradition of getting teas, like herbal fresh teas, put it in a cup. Then you get one of those sticks in the fire, and we always have the kettle on, and there's something so special about it. Was like, right, the tea's coming. Like it was like there's something so different when you have a tea when it's actually above your sacred fire and you're ingesting it, that it's such a special alchemy.
Such a special alchemy that's done. I like to do cacao ceremonies by my fire. Cook the cacao over the fire.
I like to have a piece of meat or something that's on a stick, and I just hold it into the fire and cook it like it would be, in ancient times, if you were just by the fire and you've got your piece of meat and you've got what you've got, and just take my time.
Exactly. Cook it the way you want to cook it. Okay? Now that we've talked about fires, and we're getting to the point where the ceremonial fire is ending and it's beginning to naturally convert into a recreational fire that we're not ready to close down yet. Let's talk about some of the normal recreation we can do as we've transitioned from the sacred side to the recreational sacred side. What are some of the things that you guys like to do around the fire after that process has begun?
The first thing that I do is put music on. But that's just me. I'm probably a music addict, actually. But that'd be one of the first things I do. So I'll get the tunes out and just set the atmosphere. And then I'll roll something up and then just sit there and just allow the evening to take its natural course. I'll do anything. Sometimes I'll dance. Sometimes, especially when the sun's gone down and there's no one around, I'll get quite motivated and move around and, become like a child in a way.
Laura, what about you?
Sometimes I might write, and sometimes I might just do some drawing, take some crayons out there or something and just doodle and just get into a really relaxed co-creative mode with that fire, because you've had all those energies, and it's lovely to channel them just a little bit into something very creative, isn't it, as you're by the fire. And sometimes I might just chat to the fire about everyday things, just rather than it being full-on ceremonial.
Right.
Just like the fire is a friend that you're just talking about your day with, or your plans and things like that.
The energies come and go, don't they? They fade, they come and go. And
yeah, what about for you?
I'd say I like to lay down a little bit. So as it's finished, I just like to lay down, relax, and just the fire's at my feet and I can just feel the warmth. And it's just a kind of surrendering process at the end, just having a bit of a rest, but knowing that the fire's still there with the noises, the popping and everything. So for me, at the end, I like to have a lay down, or I do have a chat to the fire, maybe say a few things about what I want to do or what I want to let go of, or what the fire showed me in the evening. I thank the fire and maybe say, for what you've shown me this evening, I honour you and I appreciate you. And so there are many different things, but I do like to have a nice lie down and just hear the fire and feel the fire at my feet, the warmth of the feet as well.
So it's a good idea to journal. If you're new to fires, when you reach that time where it's just recreational, journal. What did you happen? What's going on? So I see a question in the chat room. Can brewing beer count as well as your ceremony? Absolutely. It could be your entire ceremony. Okay? Any brewing itself, brewing wine, brewing beer, brewing hard alcohol, that is bringing something to life. The key to the fire, it's life. Alcohol has yeast in it. That's life. So yes, brewing beer can count. Do you need to brew the beer by the fire? No. But if you do, that's A+ effort.
if you've got it started by the fire, if you've got all of your stuff together and and then you brought it all out around that ceremonial fire, and then you started it off at that fire, then that becomes sacred. I've got other brews that I have in the house. I mean, it becomes sacred anyway, but it's just added energy to it. Yeah. And I have one that's all around the house from previous brews, and there are times on these kind of fires that I'll bring all of the bottles out into the garden and put them around the fire and create a circle around the fire and charge them up as well. Then once the ceremony's done, they go back into the house.
Right. Now I'm going to talk some heresy. And I mean heresy because there are times that I will bring my laptop out by the fire, because I know my internet will reach there, and I'll watch a video. Is that heresy? What is that?
That's you co-creating with the energies of the moment that you've
Being
created.
at peace with the energy.
Yeah, because
Knowing full well I've done my due diligence, and I'm at that recreational point where I can recreate with that energy. Now, I don't recommend everyone at that time bringing out and putting it on, but you get the understanding. What does it take for you to get a recreational mode? What's it going to take you to be at peace? Sometimes it's the video just playing in the background that you're ignoring that brings other things to your awareness and attention. Okay? When that
It's like-
fire ends, I don't always want to go in.
Yeah. It's like you have to learn to become from the human being into the ceremonial being. But then when you become the ceremonial being, you have to learn to bring the human being into it as well. So at the beginning stages, if you were on your devices loads, you're just not doing it right. But as you progress, in order to not be a zealot, sometimes you want to express those parts of yourself to the fire. Share that, whatever you do in your leisure, but you're doing it in a way because you know it's sacred and it's a co-creation and you're at peace with it.
And it's also taking the serious stick out your backside.
Right.
But the closing ceremony's done.
I put on stand-up comedians and laugh my ass off.
Yeah, that's great alchemy.
Okay? Yeah. Music. Sometimes, I'll put on, a movie I have never seen before. And I'm sharing that experience with the ancestors. And that's wonderful. They don't watch TV on a regular basis. I remember years ago I watched North by Northwest with the ancestors. Okay? They loved the movie. Okay? Taking that serious stick out of your ass during the ceremony of times, it's such a vital part of the journey. It's as important as prayer itself. Because the more serious you get, the harder it is to be relaxed and be in tune with yourself and just let yourself flow.
And when you're relaxed, you can get to that heart-spaced awareness. And that's what really gives you that connection of the moment.
Exactly. Now let's talk about closing the ceremony down. What does it mean? Maybe guys give an example of how you would do it. We'll start with Maty.
Oh gosh, I was only talking with somebody about this today, and I feel that maybe I need to spend a little bit more time on that part of my ceremonial expression, because for me it's almost like I've had the build up, I've had the orgasm, and now I'm smoking the cigarette afterwards. And it's almost like
already in the cab going home.
Yeah, that's right. But but that cigarette afterwards, I only smoke half and chuck it on the floor. But so it's very much the same mechanically as the opening. It's just that there's not as much going into depth in each one of the connections that I'm calling in. I just bring those connections and then I just release them from the sacred space. So it's for me, it's not a particularly long process. It's more powerful on my indoor fires than it is on the outdoor fires.
Laura, what about for you?
I will be thanking the fires and going round to the 7 directions and the winds and everything that I have involved in the co-creation of the fire and this portal, the ancestors. I will just sort of name everything again and close it down, and especially the fire. So I probably save the fire till last. And thank Grandfather Sun, because Grandfather Sun is the fire. The fire is Grandfather Sun on Earth. So I would be maybe just do. Sometimes I have a little poem or something I say at the end, something that I've written about the fire as an honouring to that fire for the service and the co-creation and the joy that we have shared together. Acknowledging its part in my journey, its part in my solstice. And always just closing it down with a lot of honouring and a lot of thanks.
Okay. How do you actually put your fire out?
Sometimes I don't. I don't put my fire out because if I've closed my fire, then I've closed the sacred space, done everything, all the honouring, then I will step back. And I just leave the last few coals or whatever there burning away. I quite like that. I quite like to go to bed thinking of those last coals there. And I might look out my window and say, oh, it's still there. It's still sort of like burning away. There seems to be that connection I want to have into my dream time.
I have the same thing, but there are people who live in other areas where they can't do that. So when it comes to putting out your fire, bucket of water, okay? But just understand, when you have a hot fire, the majority of that water is burnt off into steam, and there's still a lot of heat left in the fire, that it will start again. And just like Laura said, you'll come back the next day and it's still smoldering and still smoking. I have had fires that 2 and even 3 days later, if you just brush off the ash and put dry wood on there, it'll relight itself. Okay, that's how much heat is stored in there.
So there's a technique, if any of you are having fires out there in like public woodland areas. My friend who's like a bushcraft instructor showed me it a few years ago. So when I'm doing them in forest, and you need to close it obviously so it doesn't look like you've been there, what I do is, as I've put loads of water on it, I'll separate it with my feet and I'll start to kick it to one side and spread the fire out. And all of a sudden, when you spread the fire out and start kicking it in one bit one way, one bit the other way, the oxygen and everything in the fire goes out. Add more water on top of that, because you don't want you going away from a fire in a public place and it's hot and all of a sudden it starts a fire. So if you are in that predicament, sometimes I have the fire in my gun, I leave the fire out in a fire pit. But if you're in that situation, there is a way where you have to put loads of water on it, then you have to kick it, all separate it. Then you'll see like the hot embers and you pour more water on those big bits. Then as I've done that, I always look like I've not been there in a public place. So I always put everything back to normal as it looked as I got there. So the next year I'd go and I'd be like, I'm the only one who can tell I've been there before, because there'll be like a little log somewhere hidden I've put behind a tree of the last year's fire in autumn, and I'll grab it and put it back and I'll be like, hi guys, I'm back.
So obviously a hose is the best thing. You turn it on, how much is enough? Until it stops smoking, until it stops smoldering. But there's also something to understand. You just did a ceremonial fire. Put it out slow or put it out fast. It's all going to be up to you. Because the next time you restart that fire, the energy in which you closed it down is a part of what you opened it up. So what I found out when I hose a fire down, when I go to restart it the next time, it's pissy. It doesn't want to get started right away because I put so much water to clean it out real fast. Okay? And that's from me in personal experience. So I have a hose because of just safety rules, and where I'm particularly at, or in many of the other places, I just got the 100-foot hose, just paid for it, so that I always had it there. It allows me to refill. I don't have to go inside. Just having that. And then a few buckets of water, 5-gallon buckets or whatever that you have, that you can put the final closing prayer into. Thank you, Fire, for giving me all of this unique and wonderful opportunity. I look forward to greeting and telling you my story the next time. But today is the end. And thank you once again as you add the water and end the story of what that ceremony was. Now, when a ceremony ends, is it really over? You're inside your house. It's the next day. What's going on in all of you?
It definitely doesn't end, because it bleeds through into the future. So like 2 days ahead of time, you're just under that special feeling of like, it's just nice. You're in that comfortable ceremonial feeling 3 days, 4 days ahead of time, but you're still connecting to that fire with even a thought, even a feeling. You're there again and you're bringing it into your life again. It's incredible how I feel the next week when I've got work, doing shows and so on. I just feel so different.
Yep.
And in dream time too. I find I have wonderful solstice dreams,
Yes.
and other fire dreams, but most really at solstice, probably my most potent fire I do, and then the dreams are wonderful, connecting back
Maty?
to the ancestors.
Yep. Maty, for you?
Well, because I stay up late, usually I'm very tired the next day because it puts me out of whack. But I have, just a real feeling of calm and peace, and it's much like doing a medicine journey. If you were to have done a medicine journey and then the next day you wake up, very much the same sensation. So I'm just gentle with myself. Don't really do a lot. I can sit around and watch stuff and just allow the energies to settle in. But there's most definitely something that remains.
Yes. So, in general, if you have an outdoor fire pit or a container or whatever, after a number of ceremonies, you will get something that looks ashish. That's known as potash. Potash is powerful alchemy. I highly recommend that you save it, and if you're a gardener, you use it as a nutrient, you use it as a soil replenisher. It's powerful to put prayers in and spread the potash as offerings to the ancestors. The same thing with little nuggets of dark coals that are left over. Pull them out and wrap them in a ceremonial thread or yarn, and then you leave that in the land as an offering to the rest of the ancestral spirits. Okay? And one last thing. In the industrial age, coal fires were common. Now, you can still find coal out there to be bought. When I was in construction, I would work on these houses from the 1880s, early 1900s, before natural gas lines were run. So everything had coal chutes. So during my construction career, I gathered quite a few large chunks of coal, like 25, 30 pounds. So at the end of construction, I'm looking at all this stuff after a season, and I must have had 30 coal rocks like that. And I'm like, well, that's enough coal for like 6 winters, okay? So what I ended up doing was taking eyeglasses and a sledgehammer and slowly broke it down. Just to warn you, if you're working with coal, it is extremely sharp, extremely shreddy. So you've got to make sure your hands and your eyes are covered and protected. But you break it down, it'll break into these little pebbles, almost to powder, and you can use that. It will make your fire going from hot to holy fuck, that's hot, instantly. So over a regular basis, I have broke off a chunk of coal like this and been able to put it in the fire and just watch the whole fire that should take 6 hours to burn in an hour. That's how fast it adds to the consumption. But I use that for my growth. Okay? I use that for my growth. And there are all sorts of other things you can use for your growth. Example, when you start your fire, you've got your pile of rocks. Rearrange the rocks every time you do a fire. Why? Because every fire is different. Everything's a new wisdom. Learn how to make a back wall. It doesn't need to be completely round or just a handful of small, but tall in the back. The back reflects the heat forward and changes the way the wood burns. Having a tall one, a tall thing, so all the heat is reflected back to you. Or get some bricks and build it up and make sure that there's airflow inside it. And what you'll discover by doing that, making those your little Legos to play with, you will learn the next side of constructing the perfect fire pit and fireplace. That's next level alchemy when you're adding that stuff to it. Anybody else have any final tips, tools, or techniques they'd like to add to people?
Not really. I guess just like if there's anybody out there and they're thinking, they don't really see the value of ceremony, what you're actually going to get from it. It just shows that you haven't done enough of it, because it really is. It's food for the soul. It is. Without it, you just would end up overwhelmed by the energies of your life. Especially if you're in a path of transformation, you need that expression. You need that release. And when you're, hands and knees rolling around in the dirt, covered in coal, all smoky and worn out, it's just the best feeling ever. It's like having 10 therapy sessions. It really is.
It's a natural way of being, isn't it? I've collected stones from different sacred sites and used them around my fire. And maybe I was lucky enough to have a tree that from where I was born. The land I was born on, so I was using some of the old wood on my fire and so on. So you can be quite inventive and creative about where you actually get your wood from as well, or your stones from, or anything that's related to the fire.
Exactly. So now I want to touch on something else here. We will be leaving for Scotland. Brain fart there. We will be on tour, so we will be having some replays on. But to let people know, we're doing a special healing retreat. You're going to be in York. We're going to be doing our combined therapy. We talked about this last week. We'd have a number of people that have already inquired. We have one space left open for the 22nd of July. Laura, do you want to talk about this real quick?
Yeah, what we've got is a day of combined healings. So we've got craniosacral therapy, we've got a PEMF mat, we've got a Lucia light, and we have the flotation tanks. So if you want any information on all of those, I'll happily send you the email. So on the Saturday the 22nd, we're only able to accommodate 4 people. And we will all be there on that day, and you'll have back-to-back treatments. The idea of combined therapy is that, say, if you start with a craniosacral therapy, then you get really relaxed, and then that can open up your subconscious to receive either the PMF mat or the Lucia light. I've experienced all of these, so I know how wonderful sort of life force enhancing they can be, all these treatments. And the beauty of doing them back to back is you get a really intensive healing. And then we will also do some other days while we're in York. So we're in York for about 2 weeks, so we're going to incorporate some other days where Maty and Dale will come in with psychic surgery and light language, and I will do some ancestral balancing CST. It will all be in the private invite that we will send out if you apply to me. So
Right.
there
And
might
during-
be 1 or 2 more dates we can do that on.
Yeah. And during the weekdays, we'll be offering a special service, schedule dependent. Right now, we're just going to call it a concierge service, so it's going to be schedule dependent. We also have access to a hyperbaric chamber. So if you were able to do 5 in one day, a cranial sacral therapy, a float tank, a hyperbaric chamber, pulse electromagnetic therapy, and a Lucia light all in the same day. For those of you that want to have a tailored, unique experience for that, contact Laura. Laura will put up her email address. So if you're interested in that intense combined therapy, or you're just not able to make that Saturday, we will have a specialty arrangement schedule dependent on what's available. But we're trying to feature this combined therapy so that these multiple therapies back to back to back actually have a chance to help you go through that body reset, opening up to that next level.
And the space that's left for the... Sorry, Andrew.
Go ahead.
And the space that's left for the 22nd, that includes a free half-hour session with Andrew at a later date online as well.
Yeah. So, Laura, once again, to give your email, it's right there. It's Laura Two Feathers at It's right on the screen there for everyone. Okay, so if
Yeah.
you're interested in the 22nd or during the week, we will be in the city of York for roughly a full weekend and 2 weekdays. We will have some unique times open. So, if you're one of those people that want to go to the next level of consciousness exploration, here you go. You want to tap into the health and wellness. You want to change yourself. Come and join us for those healing journeys.
Yeah, we'd love to have you there.
All right, everybody, let's call it an end to the show. Maddie, you want to give away for people to get a hold of you?
Yes, okay, so the Two Feathers Medicine website is going to be closing down soon because we're going to be updating, moving to another platform, but it's coinciding with Scotland, so we're not sure how long it's going to run for. So you're not able to purchase products on there at the moment. But if you want to contact me directly by email for private sessions and so forth, it's Matt Waller, MATWALLER. Oh, that's the wrong one. Excuse me. Oh yeah, Maty Waller, MATYWALLER, Two Feathers Medicine, spelt out at gmail.com.
Okay, Laura?
Excuse me.
So just use my email, Laura2 with the figure 2, feathers at gmail.com, and I will be back on Sunday with Solstice prayers for Prayer Sunday.
Dale?
So if any of you would like any soul surgery, go onto daletobin.com. My website is being redone. It's almost done. It's actually live, but there's a few things I'm adding onto it. So I have a workshop training course, the last one before I head to Scotland for a while. So if you want to come on that, it's the 19th and 20th of June, 6 till 9 p.m. UK time. So head on to daletobin.com to book and learn psychic surgery or have a session with me. I'm also developing a new psychic surgery training workshop as well coming up. So yeah, thank you again, guys.
All right, everybody, you know who I am. We are also in the next mentorship season. So those of you who are interested in being a mentorship student of mine, as everyone on this class has been here, we are starting our next one. It'll begin the second week in September. You can go to my website, andrewbartzis.com, sign up for it. What you'll do is during that time of the mentorship program, which is 2 months long, you'll get 2 free half-hour sessions with me, and you'll get 8 hours of class time with the rest of the people. So you get the personal time, you get the class time. I have a powerful set of teachings. This will be our 6th mentorship class that we've run. And for any of you that has already been in the level 1 or the level 2, the next level is also beginning. So for those that want to keep continuing on, the next level is available. Just go to my website and you can sign up there, or you can have a private session with me. And for those of you who are wondering, a next level personal interaction with me, I do offer private mentorship. I have only 2 to 3 spaces available every year, and those will be opening up in the month of October. So for those of you that are interested in a more private, longer term mentorship, you can also contact the website. All right, everyone. We will see you tomorrow for our Friday night fight night game stream. And we will catch you again for the next show. Later, everyone.
I hope.
Healing comes in many forms, all the colors aligned. You are free as a dove when you choose, a sovereign state of being.
And allow this product to work with the 7 color chakras in our own energy system.
Meditations can trigger DNA wisdom and memories in light, out-creating our limited chemical memories. So sit back, relax, as we take you on a journey of light and color.
Thank you.